On today's show, who's got the best shot, passing, and hands at the 2025 NHL Draft? We'll look at that on today's episode of Locked On NHL Prospects.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this podcast, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm Hadi Kalikesh, QMJHL and Crossover Scout for Elite Prospects with Sebastian High, USHL and Crossover Scout for Elite Prospects. And on today's show, we'll be breaking down the top 5 shooters, passers, top 3 shooters, passers, and handlers in the 2025 NHL Draft with 3 honorable mentions each. So we'll be looking at the shot in the first segment, who's got the best shot in the draft, who's the runner-ups, all that stuff. Second segment, we'll look at the passing. Third segment, we'll look at the handling. And then in our next show, we'll continue with the skating, IQ, and physicality. Before we get to any of that, though, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. If you're watching on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you think of the episode and what you want us to talk about next. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rate and review and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. So let's get started right away here with the best shots in the 2025 NHL Draft. And at the top, it's a bit of a tie between 1 and 2, in my opinion. But we've gone with Porter Martone as the best shot in the draft. Give me the breakdown on Martone and what makes him the top player here in the 2025 draft class in terms of being able to release pucks.
A bunch of power and very accurate, and he uses it so liberally. He is probably the prospect in this class that just rifles the puck without even hesitation, like ever. He loves shooting the puck. This is a player that tries everything that he wants to. He's very creative. He's very explorative with his game. He likes to see what his limitations are, and that has served him very well this season. He's logged 15 goals through 12 games for the Brampton Steelheads in the OHL so far this season. And he's added to that 14 assists, which gives him 29 points. And he's not even hit the 13 game mark yet. So the production's been awesome with Porter Martone, but mechanically his shot is lethal. He's able to score from long range against OHL netminders. In terms of NHL projections, this is definitely a guy that's going to be able to score from medium range. He's able to blend a lot of deception into his shot, and his handling work together brilliantly. He's able to catch and release pucks really quickly. He's very deceptive with changing his angle of release upon shooting. It's really difficult for netminders to really pin down the angle, even when he's like one-on-one with netminders. And when he has a screen or two to work with, he is very happy. He's a happy boy in those situations and loves to use his shot. But what have you seen from his shot specifically this year, and how have you seen it maybe progress since last season?
Well, the progress hasn't been massive, but there are some kind of incremental improvements in the way that he, just like you said, catches pucks and releases them in one motion. Doesn't need a lot of space to rip it hard and accurately either. He can make it work in really tight spaces with his release, which makes him really useful in situations like rush plays where he's receiving a pass with a defenseman really close to him, or in the offensive zone, especially on the power play. He's mostly playing flank, half wall, but when he gets in those bumper positions, he's able to play that really well as well, given the fact that he's able to shoot so quickly in such a tight space. But Cameron Schmidt is on this list as well. He deserves some mention. Really, really important part of his game, his release. He's just tearing it up right now in the WHL. He's an undersized kind of 5'7", 5'8", center/winger, mainly playing wing. Really, really interesting shot. He reminds me a lot of Caulfield in the way that he uses a small frame to his advantage to release. It's all about weight transfer and mechanics. Rather than just pure velocity like it is with Martone. Martone also has the mechanics, which gave him the slight edge. But Schmidt's mechanics are better in terms of the way he transfers his weight through his body, the way he uses downforce on his shots, the way he gets his body low, he keeps his shoulders kind of parallel to the posts when he's shooting. Really able to roll through his wrists and just release that puck hard and accurately in the top corner. So he was very close to number 1 for me. Really, really good shot that Cam Schmidt has, and I really don't understand why he got a B grade from Central Scouting. It doesn't.
Well, I mean, we know why, right?
Yeah, I
Like,
get it. He's tiny. I understand. That doesn't matter to me. He's
no,
that kind of player, and just a
yeah.
ridiculous shot on him as well. Let's move on to number 3 here for shots, and it's Émile Guité, who is a QMJHL prospect. This draft class is chock full of really interesting projects and some decent first round talent for the 2025 NHL draft. And Guité is on the verge, I'd say, of being a first rounder. He's not a first rounder for me right now. There are some other issues in his game, but his shot mechanically is insane. You'd be hard pressed to find a cleaner one timer in the 2025 NHL draft than Émile Guité's, right? It's just absolutely, it's almost mechanically perfect, right? The way that he kind of shifts his weight.
There is a reason that he was the go-to trigger man at the flanker for Team Canada on a team that had guys like Gavin McKenna in their lineup. Like, there was a lot of talent on that roster, and yet Guité was the go-to power play trigger man. As you mentioned, the mechanics are fantastic. He's a threat to score from long range. The puck hasn't been going in for him massively so far this season. He only has 4 goals and 8 points through 15 games for Chicoutimi so far, but mechanically the shot is just incredible, and the goals will come, especially at the QMJHL level. Like, he will score over 30 this year, but it's been a bit of a slower start. But yeah, like the velocity he's able to generate, just how efficient he is with his movement. There's no wasted energy whatsoever. Every single ounce of energy he puts into his windup goes straight into the puck, and he's very accurate as well. There's a lot to like here.
Absolutely, 100%. And the reason why he's not in our first round right now is mainly, well, the production situation on its own isn't enough. My issue with that is right now he's playing for the Chicoutimi Saguenayens, who have a Maxime Massé in their lineup, and Massé is injured right now. Massé is really kind of the central focal point of their offense, the leader on the ice in terms of offensive production. And with him out, Émile Guité has a shot on the top line, and he's not doing much with it. That's a concern. You also worry about the skating being not necessarily high end. It's good enough to get around, but it's not elite. He's decently sized, but doesn't really get involved defensively or energetically as much as you'd like. Like you said, he's not wasteful, not with his shot mechanics, not with his feet, not with his decisions. Very much a conservative player when he's on the ice. But once he gets the puck, he's ripping it. You know exactly what's happening. But his passing's improved a decent amount, so he's an interesting prospect. But we have 3 honorable mentions to talk about as well. Michael Misa almost made the top 3 there. Misa is absolutely tearing up the OHL right now. He's got, I think, 15 goals in 13 games, I want to say, something like that. Really ripping it up right now in the OHL. But it's less about the shot itself, the mechanics, the tool itself of shooting, and it's more about his decisions, his processing, his habits. He's always driving the net. He's always getting rebounds. He's always getting inside positioning. It's more the physical and skating tools that are kind of leading to this goal scoring kind of uptick than the actual shooting itself. Would you agree?
I would. That said, you don't score 17 goals through 13 OHL games without having 17. A very good shot.
My goodness. I thought he was at 15. Goodness. That's
no, Martone's at 15 still, but Misa is still 2 ahead. Though Martone now leads the OHL in points because he has 29 and 12, and Misa has a measly 26. He's only at 2 points a game so far. It's been absurd, that race between those 2 players this season. But as you mentioned, like I do think that Michael Misa has a ridiculous shot, but a lot of it also goes down to the decision-making habits that support it, as you mentioned. The shot selection is fantastic. The poise on the puck to outweight netminders and allow them to panic, because especially in like one-on-one situations or when he has a lot of space at the net front and he scored so many goals this season, goaltenders want to be proactive and are a bit twitchy, and he just outweights them until a pocket opens up and he just fires into it. So a lot of that is the patience on the puck, the ability to get open in tight, as you mentioned, getting onto rebounds, being at the right place at the right time consistently, and also just probably one of the most cohesive toolkits in this draft. The handling supports the goal scoring, that everything supports the playmaking ability. Like, he's able to make a fantastic pass while selling the shot through a really good handling maneuver. He's able to layer his tools really, really nicely. But as an individual tool, I don't think the shot is quite a top 3 in this class, but there was definitely a conversation around that. So Michael Misa is a pretty special talent, but we still have one more player to talk about here, or two more players actually.
Yeah.
One of them from my region, Jack Murtagh, a player I have a bunch of appreciation and time for, and that I really wanted to get in on this list. He's been the best player for the NTDP so far this season. He's missed a decent amount of time with injury, but through 5 games with the NTDP, he has 7 points, and 4 of those have been goals. And he's, I believe, the only NTDP player this season to be over a point a game. Most of them are chugging along at like 0.7 points a game in terms of like the upper end of the offensive producers. So he's been consistently producing offense when he's on the ice, and the shot is absolutely absurd. He puts so much weight and power behind it. The accuracy is really good, but it really is like it's all about velocity with Jack Murtagh, and he's able to really score from longer ranges as well. He's a really good power play trigger man, and he has a shot that you can make an NHL career out of, in my opinion, especially when it's supported by his intense energy and his physicality and a lot of the habits he has. Like he's been my favorite player to watch in the NTDP so far this season. But talk me through the last player among the shooters here in Anton Frondell, who we have a couple doubts about in terms of overall NHL upside, but those do not rest in the shooting mechanics whatsoever.
Yeah, it's very refined overall. I think refinement is kind of the connective thread between pretty much everything in Frondell's game. He's a very mature player, and it really shows up in his shooting ability. The release is mechanically sound. He's got power. He's got accuracy. There's a bit of kind of deception and manipulation missing in the way he sets up his shots, but the release itself is really, really good. That's why he's in this kind of honorable mention section for the top 3 shots in the 2025 NHL draft. Before we move on here to the top 3 passers in the 2025 NHL draft and the honorable mentions for those, just a quick word from our sponsors at PrizePicks.
PrizePicks is the best place to get real money on sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players, and you get a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. Whether you want to take your swings on MMA champ Sean O'Malley, or maybe on the NHL, whatever you want to do, you can take your massive swings on PrizePicks. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive your $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. You can submit your predictions on PrizePicks today. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you place your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game.
Alrighty, so let's move on to our second segment here, and we'll be looking at the top 3 passers in the 2025 NHL draft and give 3 honorable mentions for those as well. Listen, it's very early in the draft cycle. It's already very hard to choose a top 3 among these kinds of skill sets here. It's difficult, but let's get into it right now here with the top 3 passers. And at first overall, there's no surprise, it's James Hagens. Hagens has been by far the playmaking dynamo of the NTDP over the past couple of years, where he's been playing for the National Team Development Program, U18s, and now he's joined Boston College. He's finally on the top line with 2 amazing line mates in Ryan Leonard and Gabe Perreault. Couldn't name me 2 guys that are better fits among all NCAA teams to play on the line with James Hagens. Hagens is all about pace and decision making when it comes to passing. Every single decision he makes with the puck, in terms of playmaking skill, really results in the right plays. He's able to lift pucks across lanes. He's able to break defensive lines with slip passes or hook passes or under the stick passes. He's very, very versatile in his playmaking arsenal, and he pulls it off at a really high speed, which is, I think, the most impressive part of his playmaking kind of skill set, right?
For sure, 100%. It shines so brightly, especially in transition, when he is just absolutely bolting down the ice. And what I love about James Hagens is that, yes, he is so incredibly pacey, but he's able to really hit the brakes as well. He loves to slow down the play after accelerating, the speed differentials to create small gaps in defensive structures that he's able to hit with pinpoint passes across the ice. And it's been a great fit alongside Ryan Leonard and Gabe Perreault. And I mean, hey, Through 5 games in his NCAA career, he has a single goal, but he has 7 assists for 8 points. So the playmaking game has certainly already translated to the college ranks, which we did not have too many doubts about at this stage. But yeah, he's been really, really good. And as you mentioned, it's all those finer details and the way he playmakes at the NCAA level, the way he was creating plays at the NTDP level are very, very similar to how NHLers create as well. Like high-end NHL playmakers do it in the same ways in terms of being able to execute at high pace, being able to shift their gears, hitting defenders' triangles, lifting sticks on their way, creating space for themselves. Like it's all here. It's very refined.
Yeah. Absolutely. Let's move on to Michael Misa, who's at second here as well. He's got a very refined skill set across the board as well, and shows up at number 2 in the passing category. If you look at his stat line, you wouldn't guess, but he's a very, very, very good passer. I think that's the better of the trifecta for me with Misa. The decision making, the processing when it comes to deciding on which pass to pull off, the weight he puts on his area passes, the refinement in his ability to just spin off checks and make plays inside contact.
Yeah.
Very, very connective player. Whereas with Hagens, it's more of a chance creation mindset. With Misa, it's all about connectivity, kind of tying defense to offense. That's what really makes him special. And at third, we have Victor Eklund, who's a very, very interesting passer as well. Currently a very good prospect for Djurgården in the Allsvenskan, currently outshining Anton Frondell in almost every viewing, racking up points, and a lot of it has to do with how good he is at making passes in tight spaces. He has a lot less space in the Allsvenskan than he had in J20 last year. He has a lot less space than Michael Misa does, and he does better, in my opinion, with the smaller space that he has in terms of finding the right outlets under pressure, handling physical contact, retrieving pucks behind the opposing net, and then kind of cycling up and starting the cycle himself. The passing game is really, really refined with Eklund as well, and that's why he's in our top 3. But we have 3 very interesting honorable mentions here that we still haven't talked about yet. This is a very interesting draft class. First and foremost, in the honorable mentions, Justin Carbonneau of the Blainville Armada. As of today, I'm about to go and watch him live 2 games in a row, so I'll have even better anecdotes and things to talk about with Carbonneau. But the passing has been very, very impressive. It went from inconsistent at best because of his IQ issues to being a real strength in his game. Look off passes, high speed, high pace decisions, really good in transition in terms of getting the puck, gaining the offensive zone, slowing down, and letting players come to him so he can open up lanes. So he's definitely an honorable mention in here. We also have Roger McQueen and Malcolm Spence here as the last 2 prospects. I'll let you take the reins on those 2 and just talk us about what makes them such interesting playmakers.
Very different types of playmakers, these 2. McQueen is the more dynamic one. He is just such a high-end puck handler as well, but the creativity behind his passing game is, I think, what really drives it. He's constantly trying to create, whereas Malcolm Spence is perhaps a bit more of the Michael Misa mold of a play connector. He's hyper-aware, a fantastic scanner, has a really good mental map of the ice, and he looks to bring his teammates into the play, and rather than necessarily delivering the killer blow, but which Roger McQueen does very, very well. Even though McQueen's playmaking numbers weren't the greatest in his games before going down to injury in 8 games, he had 8 goals and 3 assists, but the playmaking is a real strong facet in his actual toolkit. And I think at the NHL level, you would see that develop a lot more. It's a bit more like maybe like the Yuri Slafkovsky syndrome, where he was plugged as a goal scorer after his 7-goal, 0-assist Olympic performance, but it's the playmaking that really drives his offensive game. I see a similar kind of thing with Roger McQueen, where the playmaking is a bit more projectable, perhaps, even though the shot is mechanically fantastic as well, and he easily could have made the list there as well. But these are 2 very good passing players. But as I mentioned, McQueen is a bit more dynamic, a bit more creative, whereas Spence is more polished and more of a play connector than a creator in terms of what he aims to do with his puck touches.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll add on Michael Spence as well. I think the Slafkovsky syndrome is even more strong with him because he had a high goal scoring U18 Worlds, but he's really a better playmaker. I think that's the leaning of his game. His shot is decent. He could have made him and McQueen could have made the list of honorable mentions there if we had extended it a bit. But really, Malcolm Spence deserves some mention here for passing. He's really good at it. Another prospect who could have made all 3 lists and didn't, Caleb Desnoyers, deserves some mention here for passing. 6'2" center from the QMJHL. He's looking to be a top 10, top 15 pick in the 2025 NHL draft, and he's incredibly refined passing wise. So thought I'd give him some love as well before I close things off here. But that's our second segment done. We'll get into the third segment. We look at the top 3 stick handlers in the 2025 NHL draft, along with 3 honorable mentions. But just before, a quick word from our sponsors at FanDuel.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need in one place to place live bets on the NFL. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you place your bets. Whether you want to take those swings on American football or European football with the Champions League now in full swing, maybe you want to watch the Premier League and look at Manchester United and how they line up under their new manager, or maybe you prefer tennis or golf, or if you're listening to this podcast, perhaps hockey is your sport of choice. Whatever floats your boat in the sporting world, FanDuel has something to interest you. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That is at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Alrighty, so let's close things off here with our final segment where we'll be looking at the top 3 stick handlers in the 2025 NHL draft, along with 3 honorable mentions. And we'll start off at the top end here again with James Hagens. Hagens is a fantastic handler of the puck, insane in transition, really, really good at, especially I think slowing down, moving to the middle of the ice, and kind of just using his hands in order to open up passing lanes, open up shooting lanes. That inside drive, that ability to just kind of manipulate the pace and tempo of the game is really what puts him at the top of this list as well. But if you look at the handling in isolation, both hands are unlocked. He's moving with full range of motion. He's able to corral pucks in the heel of his blade in order to handle very quickly in tight spaces. Very comfortable and wide arsenal of skills as well. Forehand, backhand, forehand, between the legs, one-handed tucks. We've seen it all from James Hagens. Very, very skillful prospect, and he really highlighted it at the Hlinka Gretzky Cup. Let's give some love to Roger McQueen again, who more than deserves a top 3 spot here in the handling category. He's at number 2 here, and yeah, let's give him some love.
Yeah, I mean, he is incredibly dynamic. And as I mentioned in the passing category, he's so creative. He loves to explore his toolkit. And that's one of the things that makes him a special puck handler, is that desire to really explore the absolute bounds of what he can do on the ice. He's again, really, really unlocked top hand. Just very great range of motion, as you mentioned, with Hagens as well. I think in terms of like puck carrying dynamism, those are the 2 top players of this draft class, with a very close number 3 who we'll get to in a second. Who's also number 3 in the handling category here. But yeah, McQueen, it's all about also how he's able to layer in his frame, his reach, and use his reach in tandem with that creative puck and smooth puck handling ability to just play keep away. He's one of the best keep away players in this draft class at the WHL level. And yeah, he's able to create through it. He loves to also then take the puck cross body, and because he has such massive reach, that actually gives him a lot of space to work with. So he loves to go from carrying the puck on his backhand and then switching over to his forehand, cutting across the defender, and then rifling a puck in one motion. And it's able to really blend nicely in with his playmaking and his goal scoring ability. And we look for that. We don't look for just puck handlers that are flashy with the puck on their stick. We want them to be able to create through it. And in order to do that, you want them to be able to layer it in with their goal scoring and playmaking abilities too, which McQueen does to a high degree. But another guy who does that almost even better, maybe, is Cameron Schmidt. So talk me through his game and how handling kind of runs the creative motor that is Cam Schmidt.
Absolutely. So it's all about problem solving with Schmidt. It's all about finding solutions to defensive problems, solving defenders' range with his handling ability. That's really the solution there. Because when you're 5'7", you don't have a high range of motion. So when you come up against Blake Fiddler, who's 6'4", 205 pounds, skates incredibly well, has incredibly good edge work, and a really good defensive stick, how do you solve that problem when you're tiny? I think Cameron Schmidt does it incredibly well and finds creative solutions to problems on a consistent basis when it comes to solving those problems against bigger defensemen. The creativity is ridiculous, obviously. I mean, we look at his game and he's pulling out between the legs moves, he's pulling out those spinoramas inside of checks, he's spinning off of pressure incredibly well. And yeah, it's just that combination of creativity, pure skill, pure handling skill as well. And just a constant ability to just find problems and solve them in ways that I've seen Roger McQueen struggle with. The only player in this draft class who's been able to solve Roger McQueen's range is Blake Fiddler. And I've seen Cam Schmidt skate around Blake Fiddler. Like, it's a very interesting kind of duality there. I think that as they develop, McQueen's handling skill set's going to get better than Schmidt's. But as of right now, I think Schmidt is a better problem solver and a better kind of situational handler than McQueen is. So they're two very interesting prospects, but in terms of upside, in terms of potential, McQueen gets the edge there. Let's talk about some honorable Sorry, go ahead.
One more thing I wanted to add on Schmidt, especially in relation to McQueen, is I think he's a lot more proactive than McQueen. McQueen loves to just test the bounds of what he can do. With Schmidt, it's very direct problem solving, where he does exactly what he needs to in a given situation to get around a single opponent.
Absolutely. So yeah, we've got 3 honorable mentions to close things off here. Porter Martone shows up again in the honorable mentions list here for the top 3 handlers. Very, very creative, very inventive. I think the pace with which he plays is really the only thing that limits his handling skill. It's a part of his game that I'm still not sold on. But when he gets his feet moving, when he gets his hands moving, they work in tandem so incredibly well, and he can move up the play. He can move the play upwards and create downhill incredibly well. Once he's 1-on-1, he's unsolvable. Goalies, you know, he shall have no idea what to do with Porter Martone 1-on-1. So very creative, very inventive, very skillful. He could have easily made this top 3, but it's a really rock solid top 3 that we have up here as well. Michael Misa shows up again. Again, he's just so refined across the board. In my opinion, he's the number 1 pick, even though James Hagens is top in passing and handling in these categories. I think Misa's overall game puts him at number 1.
You're in the Misa at number 1 camp now.
I like
it.
He's ridiculous.
I haven't done my board just yet, but I think when I do, I do believe Misa will come out on top. But it is a tight race, and we had a full episode discussing why. So we can link that in the cards. We did that last week, but it's a real discussion at number 1 this year, which is very fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And to close things off here with our final honorable mention, Justin Carbonneau shows up again. Very, very skillful player. He doesn't show up in the top 3, even though the stick handling itself is ridiculous, mainly because his handling decisions are inseparable from his handling skill. It's not like with the shot where your decision making on your release doesn't affect your mechanics that much. If you make a bad handling decision, you're not as good handler, right? Like those go in tandem. It's very rare to say. It's very difficult to separate them, and that's what keeps Carbonneau outside of the top 3. Even though in isolation, both hands are unlocked, insane range of motion. Again, he's 6'1", and he's got a long stick and he uses it really well. But when you look at the actual decisions, the way that he kind of approaches defenders, it's not always the best. He can take defenses on 1-on-4 when he's got passing options. He can, there are some issues on that side, but when you look at the handling skill, it's definitely there. And he's able to get around. When he does get around players, it's game over. He's really, really rock solid and tight. So great defensive skill set great handling skill set on that side as well. And a couple of other players, again, Caleb Desnoyers could have been in here. I think that he would have been very, very interesting to add on this list. Is there anyone from the NTDP you would say might have cracked this list, or not?
Will Moore's the one, I guess. But yeah. It's kind of the Carbonneau issue, but like compounded multiple times in terms of the decision making that supports it. In terms of raw skill on puck, he may have cracked the HM list here, but the actual decisions that support it just didn't make him a contender in my eyes. He hasn't really created all that much through his handling ability, even though he's flashed some decent end-to-end rushes. He just ends up dumping the puck in at the end. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Absolutely. I get where you're coming from. But that wraps things up for today's show. If we missed anyone, let us know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to like and subscribe if you really enjoy the content and want to keep up with our work. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rate and review and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, remember to check out Locked On Sports Today. They've got all your news and updates on what's going on around sports. And make sure to tune in for our future shows as we continue our prospect coverage for the month of November. It's been Hadi Kalikesh with Sebastian High, and we hope you tune in next time.